welcome to this third in the video series we're doing here at Fiskal, where we talk about the latest trends in business and accounting software and anything that we find interesting. And I'm Haiku. I'm joined today by our CEO, Yaku, and we're going to be talking about how AI can help you with your taxes, Fiskal's approach to people, process, and technology, and also how finance teams can become data leaders. So welcome, Yaku. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Haiku.
Looking forward to it. So let's jump right in. Can you tell me a bit about how AI has helped you during tax season?
Yes, so I'll start off by saying that there's so many AI apps available, and I think we've all been following all the innovations and all the new things that's coming out. But for me personally, when deep research was launched by OpenAI earlier this year, it was a real moment in the knowledge economy. The sense of what changed is being able to do actual deep research, not just asking an LLM a question and it's predicting the next word. It's actually running through websites, drawing real information. And during tax season, when time is limited and you want to get to an answer as soon as possible, deep research has really helped in getting to real conclusive answers quicker.
That's amazing. Yeah, because that's something that's a very recent development. So it's quite a new technology that everyone's trying to figure out right now.
100%. So I think, and what these AI models currently doing, and where I find the most application, is the interaction of using the AI model reasoning, providing proper context to the AI model, and using the deep research functionality. So it's the interaction through all three aspects of these models that actually provide a useful answer. For any of those that's used Google searches or LLMs previously looking for tax answers would know that the answers weren't really conclusive, and it really was difficult to arrive at useful information.
Yeah.
You know, they could sometimes come up with concepts or use scenarios that's not really applicable, but really difficult to get to the crux of a scenario. But like I said, using deep research directed at useful, I would say, sections in tax acts, then providing context, contracts or things applicable to the scenario that you are using, and then actually using the reasoning functionality to extract from the deep research and with the context you apply, and giving you possible tax scenarios. So
amazing.
I must honestly say, in the last tax season that we've run through, I've used it successfully in two very complex tax matters, and its reasoning came up with the correct answers.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's actually quite exciting to see what the next phase of this AI development is.
Yeah, because I know at one point it was quite an issue where the AI would hallucinate the answer. And I know there was a famous case of, well, it's probably multiple cases where lawyers got in trouble because the AI basically made up information.
100%. So that is still a risk. So that's 100% for everyone that is using AI. Hallucination is always a risk. And the point is that you have to validate. Even if you use a deep research function, it arrives, it pulls information. You have to validate the sources of the information. But what I really find useful is you can direct the search function to say which sources it should use. And that's really powerful. If you're working with a specific tax agency or you're using specific sections, most of the tax agencies actually have how-to manuals on certain sections that you can apply. So you can direct the search to use that context and only that context. But yes, hallucination is a risk, and you definitely have to validate the answers that it produces.
Yeah, that's kind of a new trend I'm seeing, is where people are placing emphasis on the importance of keeping the human in the loop. So not just trusting AI to do it on its own is actually quite important, especially when it comes to accounting and legal kind of situations.
Yeah, tax. I mean, the point is if you Google searched a tax application, I mean, anyone that has ever used Google to look for specific tax scenarios would know that you run through endless pages of useless information that's not really applicable. Now that's the same information that's available to the AI. So if you just remember how you felt and how you ran through information, that's the same point. Same point when you use deep research is that's the same information that's available to the AI. What I find useful is directing it to the sources that you would like to use and then validating those answers. So you also need to know the Tax Act. It doesn't mean that a entry-level team member that doesn't have experience can arrive at the correct answer because they won't be able to validate whether that answer is correct or not.
Okay, yeah, like me, for example. I don't have a lot of accounting background, so I wouldn't trust myself to actually validate the answer.
100%. So, I think in this current age where we're sitting and where we believe the world is going, the human in the loop that you discussed is, we feel that validation is real important and the same thing for anyone that uses AI for any aspect is there is a point of validation that needs to happen to ensure that the outputs are correct and not hallucinated.
Yeah, okay. And which has been the best LLM you've found for this?
I'm an ex-AI fan, so I use Grok 3 the most at this point in time because of that interaction, as I mentioned previously, between deep research, being able to run through search and arrive at answers. The second function being its think function, which is its reasoning model, so where it applies that. And then also I use the app a lot for dictating. So when answering emails, I dictate and I copy and paste into my emails.
Amazing. It's getting into every aspect of our lives, which is actually, it's scary at the same time as it is interesting and quite exciting. Yeah. So then tell me a bit about Fiskal's approach to people, process, and technology. We chatted a bit about the technology aspect, but obviously that's quite a big element also at Fiskal.
100%. So if you think about finance in any business, it is an interaction between people. It's humans. The definition of the word company means coming together of people, a group of people. That's what company means. And there's processes, there's operations that run, and there's processes that's built within any operation. And then there's technology that they use or tools that they use in executing their daily tasks. Now, what we try and do is be as efficient and optimize as much, be as efficient as possible, optimize as much as possible, and use technology where it makes sense. And our approach means that you first have to really understand a business, really have to understand an operation, document it thoughtfully, and then start looking at who's the people, what are the processes that they're using, and then asking ourselves, is there specific technology available that we can use to make this process more seamless or frictionless, or is there duplication of data or anything like that we can actually take out of the process?
Okay. Yeah, because last week Christo and I chatted about the importance especially of processes, because there was this recent situation where SPAR incorrectly implemented its ERP, and I mean that was just highlighting the fact of how important processes are, because someone else could leave the company who was busy doing something in a specific way, and then the next person doesn't know how they did it, so then the process gets lost.
You can hear that Christo is in operations,
yes,
because he talks about the processes. So I'll tell you about the people aspect.
Okay.
Because I find, in our view, usually the success of an implementation boils down to people.
Yeah.
It's usually humans are opposed to change naturally. They don't like it. People are stuck in their ways, and I usually say it comes in three phases. First is they struggle to interact with the process, so they don't know why are we asking questions, why do we need to go through this process. The second is they get defensive. They defend doing something this way. This is the way that it's always been. They sometimes or often use that phrase. And then lastly, once you've introduced new processes or new technology, there's a reluctance to engage with the process and technology because it's new. And that's human. So I'm of the view that it's mostly from a people aspect that implementations or new people, process, and technology often are unsuccessful because of those natural human instincts that we have.
Yeah, it's easy to forget about the fact that there's a human behind the screen, because everything is so digital these days. It's quite important, like the whole thing of human in the loop. It's bringing the humanity back into processes, which, yeah, I'm 100% on board with that. So on that note then, jumping into the next question, how can finance teams then become data leaders?
Interesting question. So finance as a department is well situated within any business. It's integrated into every function because you would see finance interact with sales, finance interacts with marketing, supply chain management, with the executives. And the reason for that is it's usually because of either a reporting, there's an interaction of, they need to report on certain KPIs or certain metrics, and finance needs to gather the information to include in reports. So finance usually interacts with every department within a business quite often. And what that does, it makes finance really well positioned to be the glue between departments, to ensure that there's interactions between departments, that there's collaboration, that's the right word, that there's collaboration between departments. Now, because finance has a view into every department, what it does is you get to talk to the pain points that exist and also on what is the reporting needs that exist. So in the new age of data and data becoming more important, finance is automatically becoming the custodians of data already through, if you're in a very old school format, through manually collecting data and reporting it. Whereas now, as we use technology in that people, process, and technology, finance has got a view into that technology and works closely with either automation teams or software teams or IT teams to collect the data in the right space, make sure that it's housed correctly. When you look at risk matrices and how to use data, that usually falls under the CFO's responsibility. So finance, one, is well positioned and is almost automatically taking that position. And CEOs across the world are expecting from their finance teams to lead the data revolution, because the reporting, the usefulness of that data, once you collect the right data at the right point, at the right time, then you can interact with that data, and that's where the magic really happens, is the reporting that comes from that data.
Yeah, because it doesn't help a lot that you have a lot of data, but you can't really see what the data is telling you. So that's the important aspect of using the latest technology to make sure you're actually seeing the correct data.
100%. So we would a lot of times see that within every division or department within a business, they have got their technology that they use, and they interact with their own data quite often, and they know it really well. But the data is then disjointed between departments, and it doesn't live in a
cohesive framework.
Yes, cohesive framework that they can report on. So that's really where I think finance teams can ensure that the data is collected and deposited in the right space.
Okay. So then, in your view, what tools are enabling this change?
So what's really interesting is in this new age, APIs between technology applications have become, or open APIs as they talk about it, has become available, where it's easy to extract your data between applications. So something that we use quite often is it really depends on which suite you're on. So let me start there. There's the Microsoft suite, and there's the Google suite, and there's Oracle. So it really depends on which frameworks you use. And for us, we use something like BigQuery, where it's a database. You house your databases in there, and we actually collect it from sales, marketing, finance, HR. We extract those data from the different technology applications we use, and then we create one data repository that we can then query and report on.
Amazing. That sounds great. It sounds like a tool that gives you like a good overview of what's happening.
100%. Everyone creates data. In today's day and age, there's so much data available. Like everything you do is actually being recorded at some point in time somewhere.
Yeah.
As businesses, we're not that great at using our own data. We're actually not being aware of all the data that we generate, and we're not storing it somewhere cohesive, like you said, or in a framework that we can actually interact with that data.
Yeah, that's exciting then, because the more you digitize your data, because I know a lot of companies are still old school, they still have paper technology pretty much. So the more you digitize, the more data you have to use then.
So that's exactly the point. So if you're using paper-based systems, your data exists. It just exists on paper. And what it does, it creates a barrier of interacting with your data. Then you need eyes to interact with your data. And the digitization is it's just about creating seamless processes to interact with your data.
Okay, amazing. All right, I've learned quite a lot. Thank you for joining me today, Jaco. I look forward to doing.
Thanks, Jaco. I really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll have a chat soon again.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll see you again in the next episode.